This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there, welcome to this edition. Africa. In the course of the hour, we'll run through the business news stories you need to know about from the continent and beyond. For now, let's start with the run through the markets. Starting in East Africa, Safaricom, the largest listed firm on the Nairobi bourse, with a stellar fourth quarter, up nearly 17.5% to about 35 shillings a share. Its market share did slide by just half a percentage point at the end of the third quarter, but that barely dented its market share of nearly 64%. M-Pesa alone, for the record, had deposits of about $8 billion by the end of Nigeria's NSE blistering rise towards the end of the fourth quarter, rising by just under 50% in the 3 months ending in December. But that rally has slowed down in 2021. The main index was about a third or so high in today's session, turning the index positive, only barely so on a year-to-date basis. Dangote Cement has fallen by about 6% over that period. MTN Nigeria, however, is about 2.88% lower. Here's what's coming up tonight. The IMF has released nearly $500 million to support Angola's ailing economy. We'll explore how low prices are threatening to force Kenyan maize farmers out of business. And there's some relief for Indian farmers as the country's Supreme Court has put on hold some controversial new agricultural laws. Let's start the hour in Angola, where the International Monetary Fund has completed the fourth review of the country's economic reforms program. That's just part of a $7 billion loan to the continent's second largest oil producer. Now, the fund has approved the disbursement of some $488 million to the country as part of the program that was agreed to back in 2018. Brent crude prices, as you might recall, have fallen by over 45% in the first 4 months of 2020. And even a rally late in the year was insufficient to claw back lost revenue for oil-producing nations. Angola's currency, the kwanza, fell by close to 30% against American dollar last year. And that has driven headline inflation north of 24%. Angola has sought debt relief worth about $6.2 billion. It has secured a temporary waiver of some $1.8 billion in balance payments from the G20. The French president says over $14 billion has been pledged to build what is being described as a Great Green Wall to help contain, or in some cases even roll back, the southern advance of the Sahara Desert. Now, the Great Green Wall is an African-led initiative that aims to replant trees and grasslands in the northern Sahel. Creeping desertification of land on the edges of the Sahara Desert is plunging millions into desperate poverty and has driven some to migrate. The project covers a strip of land that stretches a little over 8,000 kilometers from the eastern shores of the Atlantic to the western shores of the Red Sea. If all goes to plan, some 100 million hectares of land will be restored, some 10 million jobs created, and about 250 million tons of CO2 will be captured.
According to the World Economic Forum, emerging business opportunities across nature could create 190 million jobs by 2030. But the world has not met any of the global biodiversity targets set for 2020, and biodiversity is facing a financial gap of $711 billion per year until 2030. Sustainable financing is essential if you are to transition away from polluting sectors. Our meeting in Kunming, the COP in China this year, is a vital step in establishing a post-2020 global framework for biodiversity and stop of crisis.
Africa today needs much more support, Mr. President, because pollution, all those things that impact us, do not come from our countries, but from the rich countries. And that's why we need to reconsider many things, and I completely agree with your speech this morning for the cancellation, with conditions, of course, of debt for Africa's poorest countries.
I'm very pleased to announce that between now and 2025, the World Bank Group will invest more than $5 billion to improve livelihoods and restore degradation in the Sahel, Lake Chad, and Horn of Africa regions. This investment comes at a crucial time. It will help improve livelihoods as countries recover from COVID-19, while also dealing with the impact of both biodiversity loss and climate change on people and economies.
Back to North Africa for a moment. Fitch has downgraded its projections for Egypt's real GDP growth for the second time in 2 months. It's now expecting growth of about 3% in 2021, down from 3.2%, which was a forecast for December. Now, unlike the IMF's forecast that Egypt may be one of the few countries to see positive growth this year, Fitch is arguing instead that Egypt may be among 10 countries to see positive growth in 2021. Moreover, in Fitch's view, Egypt is likely to rank among the strongest as far as growth is concerned in the region, as the economy benefits from relatively early vaccine rollout, and activity might also be boosted by government investments in construction, ICT and transport projects, in addition to rising demand for exports from Europe right across the Mediterranean. Focusing on growing its battered manufacturing sector in 2021 as output from the agricultural sector rises. The government's economic blueprint plans to support the production and processing of crops locally, everything from cotton to soybeans and livestock hides, among others. From Harare, here's CGTN's Farai Mokutuya.
Neti Leather makes handbags, belts and wallets using cattle, goat, ostrich, elephant and crocodile hides. Because its products are meant to last at least 20 years, a consistent stock of quality raw materials as well as linkages with suppliers are crucial.
We have annual general meetings within the sector where we check ourselves to see at what level are they producing, and where demand is more, the manufacturers can easily hint in advance to say, I think we'll be having so much demand next year. Could you also increase your production at the production level of at the farming level of these sources of exotic skins?
They start off as individual strips, bits and pieces before they are all put together to become the product available in different shops all over the world. It's this sort of cohesion that government wants to see the economy, where the different stages of production are brought together to work cohesively to improve efficiency, increase production and achieve economic growth. Zimbabwe's National Development Strategy aims to fortify linkages between industry and the mainstay agricultural sector, which were disrupted after the land reform program and subsequent economic deterioration. The strategy seeks to transform the economy from primary production by encouraging investment in value addition, which should also lead to import substitution and export promotion. It's targeting an average 5% GDP growth per annum.
And in 2025, the anticipation that the agricultural sector as an economy should be $80.2 billion, right? The mining sector as an economy in 2025 should be $12 billion economy, right? Then the manufacturing sector as an economy should be $80 billion. So these are kind of indicative sizes of the economies which are coming on the back of strengthening of value chains.
Samuneti has taken a hit due to the COVID-19 pandemic and is operating at just 20% of capacity. It's hopeful that a rebound in tourism, as well as the government's thrust towards production, will help it ramp up activity to previous levels before the end of the year. Farai Mokutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
The East African Business Council is calling on countries in the region to harmonize their COVID-19 test charges and the quarantine periods in order to make it much easier and more predictable to do business during this unprecedented pandemic. Currently, COVID-19 tests are priced very differently in each EAC state, while containment measures also vary. Tanzania and Burundi, for example, both charge a standard fee of about $100 for both nationals and foreigners for COVID PCR tests. But the cost of an equivalent PCR test in the other states will vary quite wildly. In Kenya, you might end up paying, say, $70, for instance. This lobby says different preventive and restrictive measures undertaken by EAC partner states to control the spread of COVID-19 have significantly slowed down trade, the movement of persons and integration as well. So let's explore what solutions are on the table. Dr. Peter Mathuki is the Executive Director of the East African Business Council. He joins us live on the line tonight. Dr. Mathuki, good to see you on the program. So you've made the argument that a lack of harmonized test prices and waiting times for results, especially across regional trade, what solutions would you like to see? But also just as important, how will they be paid for and by whom?
Thank you, and good evening. I hope I'm audible. I would, appreciate, as the East African Business Council, it's been a very tough year in the region, doing business in the region. And we started a new year, and 2020 with hopes and expectations. And what is coming out clearly is different partner states are charging different rates for COVID. And this is likely to have differentials when we come to doing business across the region from one partner state to another. And therefore, we feel it's important that partner states or the secretariat that is the coordinating organ of the community comes up with some guidelines that are harmonized that would provide some guidelines or guidance to different partner states when we come to both testing and also charging. So uniformity is important, because if one country is charging more than the other, what is likely to happen is that cost of doing business in one country or one partner state will be more than the other. And therefore, it's important that we have very harmonized and uniform systems, both in testing and also in charging. And that's why we felt it's important that we come up with the harmonized measures, both in the systems that are meant for testing, but also charging. Because again, we need to contain this pandemic within the region.
Fair enough. But looking at the data, because I've looked at Kenyan exports, for instance, into Uganda, and imports to Uganda, for instance, between January and October last year, was actually 9% higher compared to the average for 2019. If we have a stellar November and December, we can actually export more across the border than we did the year before. That to suggest that despite the costs, trade volumes to Uganda, to Tanzania, are pretty much exactly where they were. If not that, they're growing.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. Of course, Uganda has been a key trading partner for countries like Kenya, I would say. But again, I would say most of the goods that what they were doing there, they were very essential goods that were meant to support and contain the pandemic. And therefore, I would say it is possible that Uganda, given the measure that they put in place to contain the pandemic, there was demand that occasioned for more of these goods that are getting into Uganda for purposes of consuming, and some of these could be very essential, and also food stuff, which were very essential for as part of the support system of the pandemic. And unlike possibly in Tanzania, where their production, and of course, given that Tanzania is part of the SADC, it is possible they were also enjoying similar benefits from other SADC, member states in getting exports into Tanzania. And therefore, I would say that yes, Uganda traditionally has remained a key export destination. And it is possible that most of these during the pandemic, they got more of the exports for food and also essential commodities that were meant to contain.
Let's circle back to the cost question and of course, harmonizing, say, quarantine numbers. If we're starting the baseline of $100 for a test, or perhaps even lower than that, who ultimately should bear the cost of that test? Is this something that governments in the region should take on their balance sheets, or should businesses take on part of that particular cost?
Yes, clearly. See, once businesses are forced to, invest some money in the cost of doing business, for example, testing, it is obvious that as businesses will have to pass these costs to the final consumer. And that is why you saw most of the partner states, they put in some economics and, incentives for businesses. For example, some of the countries reduced the VATs. And the idea was to ensure that they protect the consumer. So it was the assumption was that whenever a cost is incurred in the cost of doing business, that is passed to the consumer. And again, in the spirit of shared things and protecting the consumer, most of the EAC partner states produced or came up with some measures that were critical in protecting and mitigating in form of economic stimulus packages. Yes.
What kind of COVID-related non-tariff barriers are you starting to see emerge across the region because of this pandemic?
Sorry, come again?
What sort of non-tariff barriers are you seeing emerge across East Africa? The pandemic has rolled on in 2020 because we had to reorganize a lot of things on the fly. We had to figure out quarantine procedures. How do we test truck drivers moving into one country from the next? So what are sort of NTBs have come up in that process?
Yeah. We saw a lot of, partner states, in all of them in the spirit of trying to protect their citizens and trying to protect their businesses. They enhanced protectionism measures. So you could find that there was a lot of protectionism in the sense that some countries wanting to protect their own products or their own goods, and therefore making it very difficult, again, for some goods to move from one partner state to another. So protectionism came one of them. Delays at the border points was also something else. And because of these measures that were put in place that were not very harmonized across the partner states, you find there were delays in some cases. Before, you could take maybe half a day or few hours to clear your goods and move. But in some cases, it could take even a week. And therefore, delays at the border points also became a critical barrier.
Is that still the case within the region with, say, the Kenya-Uganda border, the Uganda-Tanzania and the Kenya-Tanzania border? Is that still the case with long delays?
Yeah, the delays have been there that were necessitated by COVID because different partner states put in place different measures to contain this. And since there was no particular harmonized approach into it, each country put in their own measures, and that caused a lot of delays. At some point, we were almost like 50 kilometers of trucks, queuing to cross. But we've been into it and trying to bring together both countries, partner states, and we try to resolve. And I would say, yes, we are still on standby to ensure these kind of delays are not there. And again, testing at the border points was also something else, because the testing of COVID was being done at the border point, and I would say it was one of the barriers. But then we advocated for this testing to be done at different points across the corridors to ensure traffic around the border points. And I think this is working out because the private sector has also invested in some of these testing points. And that has really helped to reduce and minimize some of those, trucks and stuff like that, yes.
All right, one last question for you, Dr. Muthuki. I'd be remiss not to ask you this since you're on the program. East African community countries have been trading amongst themselves to their own rule. The better part of a decade now. The East African Customs Union has been in place for a while. So what exactly would change for businesses in East Africa now that the CFTA has essentially come into force?
I would say one of the things we should need to focus on, and I think that is our key strategic areas of focus, is diversification of our export markets. Given that SCFTA is coming and we'll be having a big export market out there. So focusing on some partner state now will be having SCFTA opening the entire Africa, a market of 1.3 billion, and we'll be able now to diversify and, of course, get access to this market. It will also work towards, eliminating, some of the barriers, and this is likely to spur the intra-Africa trade, which has remained very, very low for a long time. And this is something I think the partner states of the EAC are keen and looking towards to take advantage of it. And I think the fact that since all of us as East Africa partner states are keen and looking forward to this African market, we will be able to see how together we could sit and come up with very uniform measures of exporting and again, comparative advantage. So for example, let's say one country in East Africa is good at something while the other one is good in something. We will try to support and take advantage of comparative advantage so that we can take advantage of the huge African market provided by the SCFTA.
All right, we'll leave it there for the time being. Dr. Peter Muthuki from the East African Business Council, thank you very much for your time this evening. Time now for a run through our company headlines. Let's start in banking. The investment firm Arise has acquired a 34.9% stake initially owned by Rabobank in NMB Bank, which is listed on the Dar es Salaam stock market. On the 28th of December, the Capital Market and Securities Authority in Tanzania approved the transfer of more than 170 million NMB bank shares to Arise. Now, that share transfer process was wrapped up on the 31st of December. NMB is Tanzania's largest bank by assets. It's also the most profitable one in the country. Universal Music Group is appointed as CEO for operations in sub-Saharan Africa as it looks to expand across the continent. A South African national, Sifod Lamini, is the new CEO of Universal Music in sub-Saharan Africa. Lamini steps up from his prior role as managing director, which he took up when he joined the world's biggest music company back in 2016. Samsung, in the meantime, is planning to offer more bespoke or customizable electronics, if you will, to appeal to much younger clients. The company saw a huge spike in the sales of household appliances like fridges, for example, and cleaners during the pandemic. One area of growth in South Korea were apparently fridges that can be customized by size, material, and color. Almost sounds like buying a new car, doesn't it? Samsung plans to start selling these personalized fridges in the US, Middle East, and Europe later in the year. And BMW's worldwide sales fell by 8.4% last year. The company attributes that decline to the COVID-19 pandemic, which forced many retail outlets around the world to shut down for months. BMW sold 2.3 million vehicles last year across the BMW, Mini and Rolls-Royce brands. Group sales did recover, though, much later in the year. They're up 3.2% year-on-year in the final quarter of 2020. That's a run through your company headlines. We're about 15 minutes into the hour. You're watching Global Business Africa. Here's what's coming up next. We'll explore how low prices are threatening to force Kenyan maize farmers entirely out of business. And we'll check in on this vessel that's being built in Tanzania by Tanzanian engineers. Get ready to sail when we return.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business, only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible? And why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra Nairobi. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
Welcome back to the program. Maize farmers in Kenya are finding it increasingly harder to make any money, much less break even, given that the prices being offered by the state-owned National Cereals and Produce Board have reduced significantly. In fact, they're now opting instead to sell their market directly into the market for much better yields. CGTN's Nick Mudimba has their story.
Maize farming was for a long time cherished by many farmers in Kenya's Uasin Gishu County. But many farmers are now shifting to growing other cash crops or reducing the size of land under the maize crop. Kenya's National Cereals and Produce Board, which is run by the government, has not fully reopened its stores. This has forced maize farmers to look for other markets, a situation that has led to middlemen taking advantage of the farmers.
If the NCPB opens up and puts the price at 3,000, okay? We will all rush to 3,000 and leave 1,800. And in the event that we rush, they will panic. The millers will panic.
Jesse Maize has been a maize farmer for more than 30 years, but for the first time, he's feeling the heat of price changes. He joins his workers in harvesting maize, which he hopes will find a quick market and at favorable prices. But tough times lie ahead.
Yes, I used to plant 60 acres. before. But now I'm planting only 20 because of operation cost. I cannot afford to plant so much and sell nowhere. So we are going down to almost 5 acres because we do not have protection.
The challenge we have in this country is that during harvest season, most of the farmers would like to offload their stocks to the market at one go. That usually creates a temporary glut, and that's why the prices come down. And also, we had some players in the industry who usually import a lot of maize during harvesting season, and also, worsening the situation in the market.
But technology and innovation might just be the solution for many farmers in the near future.
The price changes affect the farmers because primarily they are not making a profit, and they are forced to sell when the price is not usually right. So again, part of the mitigation, if we can introduce solutions such as the warehouse receipting mechanisms, which I know the Ministry of Agriculture is talking about here in Kenya and beyond. It's something that's also working in Ethiopia. This can actually help alleviate the problem and for the farmers to sell at the right price. The price generally is not always the problem. If you look at the value chain, how it works from end to end is if your input cost is high, then of course that will also affect what your profit margins will be. Countries such as Tanzania have done very well to cushion farmers in terms of how they are able to subsidize their inputs.
For now, the farmers are hopeful that the middlemen and brokers who are coming up with unfair prices will disappear, paving way for the government to open their stores that actually give them favorable prices. For now, they just have to work with what they have. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Uasin Gishu County, Kenya.
Authorities in Tanzania say the construction of the largest vessel ever made in the Great Lakes region is now about 35% complete. The naval architects behind this project expect the $39 million vessel to be operational by the end of the year. CGTN's Daniel Kijo has this update.
Tanzania is drilling, welding, and hammering its way into new horizons in marine transports. Ships once built by colonialists are now made at home by Tanzanians. The government is in the process of building the country's biggest and most modern ship in a bid to revive marine transport in all major waterways in the country. This is the MV Mwanza Hapa Kazi 2, which means here to work in Swahili. It is now a quarter of the way built. Once completed, it will serve many purposes, ferrying passengers, cargo, tourists, even social ceremonies.
It's going to carry 1,200 people or passengers, I can say, 400 tons of cargo. That will include 20 smaller cars and 3 larger lorries.
The building of this mega ship is part of a broader government plan to improve transport and stimulate trade, tourism, and travel in the Lake Victoria zone. This ship will be the largest in the Great Lakes region. The government says that apart from operating local routes, the modern vessel will also serve in some regional routes to Port Bell in Uganda and Kisumu in Kenya, something they believe could transform millions of lives and keep trade buoyant across East Africa. Besides building new vessels, old ones are also being refurbished. Several restorations are already complete, including the MV Butiama and the new MV Victoria, which was completed last year.
You enjoy 2 things at a time: reliable transport to reach where you're going, but also enjoying enjoying the journey. The journey becomes something circuitous, something to enjoy. You see, something very memorable. And MV Mwanza Hapa Kazi 2, I think, will meet those demands.
The construction of the MV Mwanza ship is being done by South Korean contractors, working together with Tanzanian engineers, plumbers, and welders. The project has created over 1,000 direct and indirect jobs. Engineer Vitus Mapunda, who heads the project, says Tanzanians are benefiting from the knowledge and skills transfer.
We believe upon completion of this project, our people, within 140 technicians here, will acquire skills to work independently on their own in the next few years.
To create modern marine transport sustainability in the East African region, the government has built a shipyard facility at the Mwanza South Port. It's hoped that once this ship is complete, many more can be made to provide an affordable way to travel for a region that needs it the most. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Mwanza, Tanzania.
Egyptian banks have been key in implementing some of the government's measures designed to mitigate the economic damage from the COVID-19 pandemic. But it's also slowed down the listing of stakes in state-owned entities like Banque du Caire. CGTN's Yasser Hakim spoke to the bank's CEO and chairman, Tarek Fayed, to explore how the banking sector's navigated all the damage caused by the pandemic.
Basically, the Egypt reform program has created a solid buffers for the economy and managed to reduce the severity of the pandemic during the last, I would say, year. This was also followed by preemptive measures which has been taken by the central bank and the government. All these factors combined has safeguarded the Egyptian economy and safeguarded the banking system from having a negative impact on our system at large.
Tell us more about the initiatives that have been taken by your bank and obviously the Central Bank of Egypt to facilitate the situation for companies and individuals.
Some of these initiatives was basically extending the overall loan book for 6 months for an amount of almost 2 trillion Egyptian pounds. Also, the central bank has reduced its policy rates by 300 basis points. And also it reduced the interest rates on some of the major sectors in Egypt, like the construction, the manufacturing sector, tourism and agriculture by an additional 200 basis points. Reduced the credit guarantee scheme for more than 100 billion Egyptian pounds. That helped a lot in ensuring the flow of extending new loans to a wide range of corporates during the crisis.
At the beginning of the outbreak, there was an exit of foreign currency and investors, foreign investors from Egypt, whether from treasury bonds or from treasury bills or bonds. And although they returned, there was a gap during that time. How did you manage to find an alternative source of hard currency to make up for these outflows?
If we look during the last I would say 6-7 months, the government of Egypt managed to launch a bond offering for calling for $4 billion or $5 billion, and this bond offering was covered 4.5 times. So this was a good success in order to fill in the gap of foreign currency needs. And also we had a very strong access to international institutions like the IMF and the World Bank in securing loans for around 8 billion. For us as Banque du Caire, we played an instrumental role in all these aspects. We were basically captured large number of the foreign currency inflows coming from funds abroad. We acquired a market share of around 10%. Also, we are a strong player in remittances market, and we capture a market share of also another 10%. And also, we have been started to build during the last couple of years corporate relationships with businesses that are geared towards exports, and this helped us a lot as a bank in order to capture a sizable amount of foreign currencies. We were one of the very few markets that have witnessed a solid inflow of around $25 billion in 2020.
Going into 2021, the banking sector and your bank has been trying to transform itself into the digital transformation age and to try to improve the online system and the online banking system. Tell us more about your plans for the coming future.
In a very short period of time, I would like to tell you that we managed to introduce internet banking for retail and corporate. We introduced our mobile wallet. And also we have revamped our mobile wallet where it came up with 3 years back. It was only a few thousand subscribers. We managed to increase this number to almost 500,000 clients in the end of 2020. We have also added new cards to our clientele where it reached almost 2 million cards in a very short period of time during the last 3 years. And also we have increased our credit card business. Maybe it was 40,000 in 2018. It increased to almost 150,000 by the end of 2020 with a total exposure of 1 billion in loans.
Thank you very much for joining us here on CGTN.
At 18:36 GMT, time for a short break. Here's what's coming up next. Relief for Indian farmers as the country's Supreme Court puts on hold controversial new agricultural laws. And foreign investments flowing into China have hit a new record. We'll look at the latest data when we return.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant.
Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to the program. These are some of the stories making your headlines at this hour. Starting in Malawi, 2 high-ranking government officials there have died due to COVID-19. Linkson Bele Kanyama and Mohammed Sadiq Mia were serving as Malawi's ministers of local government and transportation, respectively. It is of national mourning to remember the government officials and citizens who've died in this pandemic so far. Malawi's President Lazarus Chakwera has also declared a state of national disaster. In Ethiopia, the National Defense Forces have announced the arrest of at least 9 top officials from the Tigray People's Liberation Front. They include the former president of the region, Abiy Waldu, and the country's former Minister of the Economy, Abraham Tekeste, who was also the deputy president of the region. The arrested TPLF leaders have been brought to Addis Ababa from the Tigray region. The government says those arrested will soon appear in court. And a parliamentary bill in Tunisia that's proposing the conscription of women into the military has been tabled. That's according to the country's defense ministry. The bill is aimed at achieving further gender equality by introducing mandatory military service for both men and women. That's a run through your headlines. Let's move on to India now. The Supreme Court over there has paused the implementation of new farm laws that have been fiercely opposed for weeks now by farmers. The court says it will set up a panel to hear their objections. For more than a month, tens of thousands of farmers have camped on the outskirts of the capital, New Delhi, to protest against reforms passed in September last year. They say the measures benefit large private buyers and they harm growers as far as they're concerned. The government, on the other hand, argues that the laws are aimed at modernizing an antiquated agricultural system which suffers from colossal waste and bottlenecks right across the supply chain. 8 rounds of talks have failed so far to resolve this dispute. The two sides are set to meet yet again later this week on Friday. Foreign investments in Shanghai expected to hit a record high in 2020, and that's despite the impact of the pandemic. The city expects the funds to total more than $20 billion. Shanghai's optimizing business environment and the arrival of more and more foreign companies have collectively made a large contribution to the city's development. CGTN's Chen Tong takes up that story.
At fashion conglomerate LVMH, the pandemic pulled down revenue in the US, Europe, and Japan by double digits in the first half of 2020. But its Asia-Pacific slump was narrowed by market growth in China, especially in Shanghai.
Shanghai actually is in competition not with just Chinese cities. Shanghai is a place that actually competes with Paris, with London, with New York, with Tokyo, with Singapore. This is a place that actually stands out as an international fashion city with a lot of consumers.
Shanghai's large population and strong purchasing power have attracted many retail giants to come and set up here. But over the past years, global manufacturing giants have also come, hoping their Shanghai plant could serve their global production chains.
This intelligent transport system was developed by B&R Industrial Automation, a subsidiary of Swiss manufacturing giant ABB. Since 2018, more than 2 kilometers of these belts used in assembly and packaging operations have been sold nationwide. Major purchases range from battery makers to car producers. The product has been primarily produced overseas and imported to the China market. But the company now plans to localize. Shanghai has the advantage of being able to attract top professionals, making it easier to upgrade the company's production.
作为大上海
As the core city in the Yangtze River Delta, the influence of Shanghai is very strong. The Yangtze River Delta has very advanced infrastructure and logistics. Putting the R&D center in Shanghai and setting up factories in nearby cities can optimize our company's efficiency. There are so many global headquarters in Shanghai, it helps us stay close with our clients and with professionals. We need staff in electric engineering, AI, and software engineering, and Shanghai has the people we want.
More than 60,000 foreign firms now have operations in Shanghai, where the city's optimizing business environment has provided a solid development base for them. Their arrival has also contributed to the city's growth. The Shanghai government says foreign companies contribute 1/4 of the city's GDP, 1/3 of the city's tax revenues, and 1/5 of its employment. It's become a very profitable relationship, and industry insiders say it still has room to grow.
For example, the China's International Import-Expo has already become an irreplaceable platform for the foreign investment. In addition, the signing of some international investment agreements, such as the RCEP and the China-EU investment agreement, also provides great opportunity for Shanghai to attract foreign investment. So I think we have no reason to doubt Shanghai will continue to be one of the most favored cities for those foreign entrepreneurs.
In the first 11 months of 2020, 47 foreign firms set up regional headquarters in Shanghai, and 20 set up their Asia headquarters here. And on top of that, 18 R&D centers were also established in the city. This stable growth is snowballing and continues to make Shanghai the most attractive city in Chinese mainland for most foreign investors. Chen Tong, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
Europe's largest plastic producer is taking a step towards cutting down the use of plastic. Germany's single-use plastic bag ban at malls, stores and supermarkets was announced by the government in an attempt to reduce plastic pollution and meet its EU goals. From Berlin, here's Evangelo Sipsas with that report.
Department stores, restaurants and markets like this one will have to give up single-use plastic products starting next summer under the new EU regulation law that bans plastic cutlery, plastic plates and plastic straws. But the German government has introduced an additional law. Plastic bags like this one will be something of the past starting 2022.
Late last month, German lawmakers voted in favor of a complete ban. The decision comes as the European Union has set a goal to reduce plastic bag pollution by 80% by 2025. So retailers have under a 12-month transition period to reduce their remaining stocks. For smaller shops, the transition could be a bit more challenging.
The problem for me is that 12 months period is not good enough because we have a lot in stock. So the government has to find a solution, or to give us the money back, or to give us a little bit more time to send them away.
Approximately 100 billion plastic bags are consumed in the EU every year, 2 billion of them in Germany. That's 24 bags for every German citizen. Plastic bags cause serious problems for the environment, mainly in the seas and oceans. Critics of the ban say the focus is wrong.
Yeah, if you have a look at the production of plastics in Germany, only less than 1% is the amount of plastic which is used for single-use plastic bags. So that's one topic which is very important. So the problem is elsewhere. Of course, it's right to ban the plastic bag, but I think it's a good initiative in countries where the waste management system has not so well developed, so that really a lot of plastic is entering the environment because it's not collected. In comparison, in Germany, most of the waste is collected and treated.
Germany is already way behind countries like Austria, France, and Italy, all of whom have already implemented full bans. Currently, a voluntary charge scheme for using a plastic bag has reduced numbers, but the country's environment ministry says it's not enough.
First thing is the agreement on the voluntary phase out of plastic bags, but we've seen we don't advance fast enough on that track. So we need to get to zero more quickly, and that's why we say, okay, we're just banning the last 20% that haven't been phased out by the voluntary agreement.
With just over a year to go until the full ban, businesses and customers will start noticing the changes next month and begin to make the world a little bit of a better place than it was. Evangelos Sipsos for CGTN, Berlin.
Now, 2020, to put it mildly, has been one of the most challenging years we've faced in decades, but there have been some bright spots along the way. The forced break we all went on has provided an opportunity to pursue other dreams that, in some cases, have turned into some pretty lucrative side hustles. CGTN's Karina Huber has more.
Gauthier Coiffard is a software engineer by day. By night, he's a busy baker, churning out baguettes and croissants. He knows bread. He's been living in New York for 8 years, but he grew up in France. He long lamented the lack of options in the city, so he gave baking a shot.
I didn't really find any good bread or not too expensive bread around here. So yeah, I tried it a few times, several times, and then, it worked.
That's an understatement. At first, he made the bread for he and his wife Ashley and a few friends. Now it's a thriving business with orders coming in from across New York City as well as Boston and Toronto. Marketed mainly through Instagram, it has brought in roughly $30,000 for the couple since June.
We find ourselves giggling at 12 o'clock at night, just wondering how this happened because we still don't understand.
Ashley quit her job as a mortgage processor to focus on the business. She helps with the baking and the early morning deliveries. The whole experience has altered their dreams for the future.
Before June, we never thought of owning a bakery, and now we talk about it almost every day.
The disruptions caused by the pandemic haven't been all bad. For some, it's meant they now have more time to focus on projects they've long put aside. Others have picked up new hobbies they never dreamed would lead to businesses.
Pre-pandemic, Jessica Feinberg was a preschool teacher transitioning into real estate. 9 months into the pandemic, she now spends most of her days making bracelets. It's a hobby she's turned into a lucrative side hustle. It all started with a $15 loom kit she bought in March to keep her 2 boys occupied. They showed no interest, but she loved it. She soon marketed her $12 bracelets through social media. She's made around $20,000 this year.
The one funny thing is I always said I wanted to have my own business by the time I turned 40. And I turned 40 in October and I have my own business.
The bracelets are now carried by 6 retailers, and wholesalers want to work with her. She never imagined she'd have a booming business. Being open-minded is one of the many lessons she's learned in the pandemic.
I mean, just like finding the silver lining, finding what makes you happy. And like, this is definitely the best thing that's come out of the pandemic.
Karina Huber, CGTN, New York.
Now, January usually hosts the world's largest consumer electronics show, CES. It's famous for attracting tens of thousands of companies and people attending it from around the world. But this year, the show that started on Monday is 100% virtual. Here's Mark New with the details on what's hot tonight.
This is CES 2020, jam-packed with more than 170,000 people. And this is CES 2021, the world's largest consumer tech show, completely online for the first time ever. Throughout the week, hundreds of companies are all live streaming events at the very same time, competing for clicks.
Welcome to the all-digital CES 2021.
This past year has been unlike any other. We've been challenged, but we've also had opportunities. And the opportunity has been, as a world, we've moved to this digital transformation quicker and by several years we would have otherwise. We've been forced to adapt, and we have.
Major tech companies like LG got things started by teasing viewers with a glimpse of the future, a rollable phone. A similar concept was given more concrete details at an event by TCL. The Chinese company showed off a phone that could expand in size with a tap of the finger. TCL also unveiled a printed OLED scrolling display.
The flexible OLED scrolling display can be widely applied on flexible TVs, curved and foldable displays, as well as transparent commercial display screens with the cost 20% lower than the most traditional display technologies.
Screen technology also accelerated in the auto world as Mercedes-Benz introduced the Hyperscreen. The screen is equipped with artificial intelligence, which learns about you and proactively makes suggestions.
It's stunning on the outside, super intelligent on the inside. It's a nerve center that connects everyone in the car with the world inside and outside.
Samsung introduced what could be one of its most popular robots ever if it works as advertised. Samsung showed off a video of Bot Handy using its robotic arm to perform all kinds of fine motor skill tasks. Computer vision even allows it to help with the dishes.
Robotics and AI adapting to you and helping you do things more easily at home.
Samsung also didn't forget about man's best friend, whose new best friend could be the JetBot 90 AI Plus. The vacuuming robot equipped with AI and sensors serves as the centerpiece for providing everything from real-time bark alerts to customized pet services. Mark New, CGTN, San Francisco.
Quick run through commodity prices. Brent crude early today did hit a 10-month high. Effectively, in the 12 days so far of January, they've gone up by at least 9% to around $56.53 a barrel. Now, the fourth quarter of 2020, fantastic for oil, and that trend seems to be carrying through into 2021, driven in part by vaccine optimism, but also by the decision by OPEC Plus to keep a very tight leash on output. Both Brent and WTI, in fact, have gone up by at least 33% since the start of October. Here's what's coming up next. Coming up, we'll have the story of a self-made designer who's keeping the ladies trendy and authentic in Mali. In the final part of our bulletin, let's focus on the world of fashion in West Africa. It takes a uniquely talented and determined designer like Mali's Namasa Terra to get the mix of trendy and authentic just right, particularly in an industry that's still struggling to win the kind of broad support enjoyed by other fashion players in other parts of the world. With her story, here's CGTN's Alexander Majala on grassroots.
Namisa Terra is the creator of Ikaluk, a Malian ready-to-wear brand that offers a contemporary mix of African prints with European wear. The brand name Ikaluk literally translates as your style and is a combination of two words, Ika meaning yo in Bambara and the English word look. Terra conceived the idea for a fashion brand in 2008 in her quest to find clothes that suit her style and taste in fashion.
The modern Malian women are like me, like all my customers. In terms of dressing, they want to wear clothes which have a story, clothes that reveal their personalities without needing to say much. With their clothes, they want to show self-esteem, pride in African designers.
The self-taught designer and stylist developed her knowledge and her taste in fashion from studying big brands like Chanel and Dior. According to her, the passion and originality of these brands are what makes them great, characters she channels into developing her brand as well. Terra's target clients are young professionals who are rejecting the mass-produced Western clothes and want more of the traditional style. One of them is Anna Konate.
I have the same one I wore in New York 1 year ago. I like the materials used. I find it cheerful, and it really fits in with my style as an active woman. Wearing Ikaluk is very practical, and when I wear Ikaluk outside of Mali, I feel like I really represent Mali.
Terra launched her latest collection in 2019. It's called Bara, which means work in Bambara. According to the 34-year-old, the Bara range is smart, light and practical.
Bara 2019 is a collection that is made from 100% Mali cotton. The collection is inspired by everything denim and the spirit of work because it's Bara. The inspiration for the collection comes from the denim thread, from Jamebe, and the bobo for what we can call the smart look.
Terra makes her clothes with materials woven at the state-sponsored Bamako Center for Textile and Handicraft Development. She also uses bogolan, which means from the earth in Bambara, and woven panya, a wrap often bursting with color, which forms the basis for most West African women's clothes. Using traditional fabrics, Terra then injects a modern touch into her dresses, tailored suits, and evening outfits to create practical yet chic outfits. Known for its quality because it's picked by hand, African cotton makes up to 10% of world production. Mali is the lead producer in sub-Saharan Africa. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Run through the currencies as we wrap up the program. Let's start with the crypto side for once in this particular bulletin. Bitcoin's decline from close to $42,000. That seems to have taken a bit of a brief pause. The cryptocurrency was about 3% higher at just over $35,000 at 10:33 GMT. Angola has gotten its fourth tranche of cash, as we mentioned earlier, from the IMF, just under $490 million. But the currency side of it is equally interesting. It weakened a fair bit in 2020, going as low as 6.73 to the dollar. But the Kwanza seems to have steadied in the fourth quarter of the year. The Kwanza's clawed back about 2% against the dollar since the start of November. That's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. As always, we'd like to hear your thoughts on the content you've seen on the program in the last hour. There are many ways to get your thoughts back to us, all of them on your screens right now. I'm Ramah Nyang in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Thank you for your company in the last hour. The World Today is up next from Washington, D.C.